Civics, a program on Arlington Independent Media, where we meet people who are involved in the community in many different ways. I'm Michael Shea, the host for this episode of Civics. We're joined tonight by Koube Ngaaje, who has been involved as a teacher. She's been in social services, and she's been appointed by the court to be a child advocate. So she's had a very interesting experience so far. So Koube, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on Civics.
Thank you for having me.
So let's go back to the beginning, if we can. You've been involved in your communities because you live different places in different ways. What's one of the first times you can remember being really engaged in the community? What were you doing?
Probably as far back as I can remember, probably when I was young, maybe 8 or 9, and my mom had a women's center. And so I would go and help out at the women's center, and my mother always encouraged us being my sister and I, to really give back to our community. And at the women's center, we helped women, and this was back in Cameroon, West Africa. We helped women develop skills on how to run their own businesses, or how to be more independent, and just simple skills that they weren't able to learn elsewhere.
Right. Yeah, I think in Africa that's really important in a lot of places. The cooperative that people get together and they learn skills, and
Definitely.
It's really building up a community. So you moved to Texas.
I did.
And so what were some of the things you did in Texas that related to the community?
So my family moved to Texas in '99, and then went to Baylor University, graduated from Baylor in '06, and then moved back home to Dallas.
Okay.
And when I moved back, I didn't just want to work, I wanted to give back. And so I volunteered as a CASA, which means a court-appointed special advocate for children who have been neglected and abused. And essentially what a CASA does is you have to dedicate at least 12 months. So you're appointed a child, and this can be someone who is a baby all the way up to 18. And you essentially follow that child's case. A lot of times when we're looking at cases within the juvenile justice system, these children are, there's so many players involved in their cases. And as a child advocate, you are court-appointed special advocate, you're that one constant person in the child's life. And so you would, go talk to all the different players, talk to the child's teacher, their doctor, go do home visits with the parents or the caregivers, and really just talk to every single person who's involved in that child's life. And then you make a recommendation to the court, and just tell them what you think is the best interest of the child. And I did that for a year, and it was hard, but truly rewarding, just to be able to say, okay, well, here's this child, and even if it doesn't end up with the child going back to their parents, you make a recommendation that, okay, I think the best thing for this child would be to stay with their current foster family. Or if there's a family member who has stepped up and said, yes, I can help out with this child, then, you would recommend that they go with that, family member. Or if there's no other option, maybe the best option is to turn the child over to the state, and the state can then find a really good home for them. Right.
And did you feel like you had training in that, or was that a lot? Was there some learning on the job for that kind of? That's an unusual role, and I think you've got to. It's hard to say what skills you need to do it.
Well, I mean, I have always sort of volunteered a lot in doing things with children, whether it was tutoring or helping kids. I'm in the sorority. I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and as part of our sorority is we are a community service-based organization, and you are mandated to go out and help. And we would always go and help out with the children. So when I graduated from college and moved back to Dallas, I was thinking, oh, well, I want to do something that helps children. And I went over to CASA, and part of CASA is there is a very in-depth training that they teach you, well, these are sort of the scenarios that you'll come across, because, there's a lot of privacy issues, and you have to be sensitive to what the child is going through, all the different people who are going to be in that child's life, and just really making sure that you don't make promises that you can't fulfill to the child. So they do give you a very in-depth training, and you have to sign on and say, yes, this is what I've committed to, and I know what's expected of me. And then after that training, there is someone on staff who is there, sort of your supervisor that you report to quite constantly, and tell them, okay, well, this is what's going on with my kid or with the case that I'm working on. After you go and you do a home visit with the child, or you go and do a parent-teacher conference, just to make sure that that you're not out there alone,
Right,
and they
right.
do provide you with sort of the skills and the necessary backup to make sure that you are helping the child appropriately.
Yeah. So then you headed off to graduate school
Yes.
soon after that, which got you to Arlington.
So
how did that happen?
I, after working with CASA, I sort of saw that there was a huge gap in services for children, and I was inspired to go and work in. I wanted to do policy for the juvenile justice system, so I searched around and saw that Marymount University had a really great forensic psychology program, which for most people they think CSI, but forensic psychology it's the perfect marriage between psychology and law.
Okay.
And so I wanted to, because my background is in psychology, I have a Bachelor of Science in psychology, I wanted to, merge those two fields, the legal aspect and the psychology aspect. And so I moved to Arlington, got my master's in forensic psychology at Marymount, and almost 7 years later, I'm still here.
And then you, I think during grad, when were you doing some teaching?
While I was in graduate school, so I went to grad school full time, and to pay bills and to make ends meet while I was there, I worked for the Arlington Food Assistance Center at AFAC, and I also was a part-time teacher and tutor.
Okay. And you also did internship at the Child Welfare League.
Yes.
So was that policy, were you working on policy issues there?
Right.
Yeah.
So with the forensic psychology program at Marymount, you have to do an internship, and you choose a field that you are interested in to do your internship. A lot of my colleagues in the program went to, the FBI or the
Right.
CIA, or went to do probationary work. But I chose to go more on the policy route because that's where I wanted to work in. So I interned with the Child Welfare League of America, or CWLA, as most people know it now. And they were housed in Crystal City at the time. They've since moved over to DC, but it was a wonderful internship, just working on the actual policies that affect children. Having worked on the ground, it was great to sort of see it from a different level, and to see how all these rules that are set in place actually trickle down and then impact those children. Because
Right.
that's what got me interested in the first place, is seeing the law in action from the ground. I was inspired to say, okay, well, I want to go into policy, and I want to make those policy changes that will make sure that these children don't fall through the cracks, because it's a lot of times it's cyclical. You see a parent who was abused or neglected, and all of a sudden they're doing the same thing to their child, and their child does it to their child, and it just sort of it seems like a never-ending cycle. So. But there's a lot of great people who are working to change that, and it was a pleasure to be part of that through CWLA.
And could you relate what you would experience as a CASA, sort of I mean, maybe that was only one trial experience, but still, kind of the system, and understand the policy.
Oh yeah,
That
I
gave
mean,
you a different frame.
it does give you a different frame when you're looking at policies that are meant to protect the child. When you look at a case where it's a little girl who maybe her parents were on drugs and left her at home for hours on end, and the neighbors called in the cops, and that's how CASA got involved. But when you look at the policies that ensure that the police who come in are well trained, and that there are procedures set in place so that once that child is taken out of the home, they're not just going back into a worse scenario, but they are given the proper care. And that it's not, everything sort of has its place.
Yeah. Soon after that, did you get involved with AFAC? How'd you get involved with AFAC?
How did I get involved with AFAC? So when I moved to Arlington, I wanted to, I was looking for a job, and I didn't want to work at a grocery store. I didn't want to work at the mall. I wanted to do something that was meaningful. So I sent out applications to a bunch of nonprofits in the area because I knew I wanted to work in the nonprofit sector.
And it's a good area for nonprofits.
It is.
I mean, it's, yeah.
Yeah, there's no better place to look if
Right.
if you want to do nonprofit. So I got a call back from AFAC. They had a position open for a food drive coordinator, and it just so happened that they were literally walking distance from my then apartment.
Oh.
So, but I'm from Texas and we don't walk. We drive everywhere. So I drove over to AFAC, had an interview, and got the position as the food drive coordinator. And it was part-time, so I was able to still focus on my studies and get my education, which was the main reason why I moved to Arlington.
Right. And a lot of people may know this, but AFAC has been around for a while, but particularly after 9/11 and then as the recession hit in 2007, 2008, the needs of the community have risen a great deal. So AFAC has expanded a lot.
It has.
In the last 7 or 8 years.
Definitely. So when I started with AFAC in 2007, we were serving an average of about 600 or 700 families a week. Fast forward to 2014, and we're serving now an average of 17, almost 1,800 families every single week. And you're right, 9/11 really did impact us significantly. And we saw a big spike in the need and the number of families who were coming to AFAC. But since then, even though most people think the economy has recovered, for a lot of the families that we serve, they just haven't seen that recovery yet.
Right.
And a lot of the families that come to us, we are the working poor.
Right.
These aren't people who are just, sitting on their hands and saying, well, I'm not going to do anything. No, these are people who have 2, 3, sometimes 4 jobs just to make ends meet. There's the people who could be me. And while I was, when I first started at AFAC, I would tell my mom all the time, hey, if I don't go to one of my jobs, or if I lose one of my 2 jobs, I could be an AFAC client.
Yeah. Because your numbers, 17, 1,800 or so now, but you've even been higher than that in the past.
Yeah,
And,
I think just the highest we ever saw was this past holiday season, where I think the week before Thanksgiving, we served over 2,100 families. And that's
a lot.
That's a lot.
Now, and with cuts in food stamps and cuts in unemployment benefits, do you think you're headed into a higher phase of having to meet needs? Because the people are out there. The
people are out there, and I do think we do face more. Our numbers are only going to go up at this point.
Right.
I think, and we saw a little bit of that with SNAP cuts that went into effect November 1st, and even though it was the holidays, and our numbers always go up during the holidays because that's when a lot of need happens, but definitely not to that extent, not 2,100. Normally we'll see about 100, 100 more families come to us in the holidays period, not 200, not 300. So I do think, yes, you're right, we will see an increase in the number of people who need us.
And I think that's an important message for Arlington, or communities like Arlington. There are a lot of ways you can say the economy is doing well here. Unemployment is low, relatively low for the Commonwealth of Virginia. But there's a need, and people have to realize that still does go on, and it's a real need in these times.
It is, and a lot of, a big percentage of the clients that we serve are people on fixed incomes.
Right.
So for our elderly, or people who are disabled, those are folks who are on a fixed income, and in most instances their situation is not going to change.
Right.
So if I am, on Social Security and I'm getting maybe $800 a month, and my rent is $650, by the time I pay medical expenses or pay for trips to and from the doctor, there really isn't a lot of money left for food. And
in Arlington, those rents are going up for a lot of people. That's the squeeze people are feeling. So even if food is not maybe getting a lot more expensive, the rent is becoming a real
definitely
factor. But the other interesting thing about AFAC, and we'll get back to your experience with AFAC in a moment, but the other interesting thing about AFAC is it's not just a food distribution center. You've got so many partnerships with different groups that, I don't know what the right word is. It's very multidimensional, or it's it's a very flexible service delivery, comprehensive service delivery. Well, I'm struggling for the word, but you know what I mean. That's the impressive thing about AFAC, I think.
Well, I mean, when I started at AFAC, we have our 3 main sites. And for anyone who doesn't know much about AFAC, we have a site at our main location at Nelson Street. We have a distribution site here in the Clarendon area at the Clarendon United Methodist Church, and then we also have a distribution site at Gunston Community Center. But what we were realizing over the years is that a lot of people, transportation is a huge issue for a lot of people who come to AFAC. And for those of our clients or potential clients who couldn't come to us, our mission is to feed our neighbors in need. And for a lot of people in Arlington who were food insecure and couldn't afford to make ends meet to buy food, but yet couldn't afford money to get to AFAC, we then went out directly to them. A great example is we go to all of the 5 elderly living facilities here in Arlington County. So instead of these seniors having to find transportation to AFAC, we go directly to them. We partner with AHC, we partner with APA, a lot of the low-income housing facilities. We also partner with the schools. We have a Backpack Buddies program that helps provide food to children who are considered homeless. So whether you're couch surfing or you're staying in a motel, these kids normally only have 1 guaranteed meal a day, and that's lunch at school. Right. And over the weekend, there's no guaranteed food that comes in. So what our Backpack Buddy program does is we pack food every Friday, and that way the kids have something to eat over the weekend before they come back to school on Monday. And then we also partner with the schools. We go directly to the Career Center, which has a lot of adult students. And now, as you know, the Career Center now houses the Career Center in Arlington Mill High School. So there's 2 high schools in that building. And for a lot of those families and adults who are in those programs, food insecurity is a problem. And we take the food directly to them because we know you're here to get the skills you need to get a great job. And so chances are you're not going to have time to come to AFAC. So it's partnerships like that. We partner with over 30 nonprofits in the county, whether it's to do referrals to AFAC or to be a distribution site for AFAC. Right. Those partnerships really do help, and they make getting the food to the families that need it a lot easier. Right.
And it probably gives you a much better idea of what is going on in terms of need, because you're not just somewhere where you're waiting for people to come to your door. You're going to where there is the need.
Definitely. And, I tell folks all the time, hunger is it's a symptom of a much greater need. If you're coming to AFAC for food, chances are there are other issues or other areas in your life that you need assistance with. So when we partner with these organizations, it's not just, help me give out food. When we partner with Arlington Free Clinic to do referrals for us, I know when I see a client or when they send a client to us to get food, if that client has medical needs, then the Free Clinic can help them out. Or if you are working with APA and you're not able to pay your rent, they can help you pay your rent, or they can help you find a job. Whatever the case may be, is these partnerships with nonprofits really make sure that, it's a comprehensive service. It's not just here's your food, go. That's wonderful, and we want to make sure that our clients are fed, but in turn, it's the services that these other organizations provide are just as vital, and we want to make sure that our clients, all of their needs are met. And by going directly to them and by working with these organizations, we can see, okay, when I go into a low-income housing facility, I can say, I know that of the 300 units that are low income, probably, most of them need food assistance, if not all.
Right. So you started as a food drive coordinator, and then...
I did.
What's been your experience there? What sort of things have you done?
What have I done at AFAC? At AFAC?
At AFAC.
So I started off as our food drive coordinator, and then I was the assistant to our executive director at the time. And I left for a couple of months for my internship at CWLA.
Okay, yeah.
So I did leave for a bit because it was the time conflict. It was the same time. Right. I had to be in my internship in the morning, 8 to 2, and that was when I was at AFAC. And after my internship was complete, unfortunately, they didn't have any open positions at CWLA at the time, so I wasn't able to continue with them. And I was working at a property management firm at the time, and I would come back and volunteer at AFAC. And it just so happened that while I was volunteering at AFAC, Charles Meng, who is now our executive director, he was our director of operations at the time. He said, well, you know, I need an assistant. If you're available to come in, would you consider it? And I said, definitely. I love AFAC. You know, it's pretty much home. And so then I was Charlie's assistant for a bit, and then did that for about a year and a half. And then I got promoted to assistant director of operations. And that was a great learning experience, just really learning the organization from the inside out.
Right.
And I'm now director of operations, and my position is I'm in charge of our HR. I do all of our food purchasing. I oversee all of our 17 distribution sites. We have over 24 distributions every single week. I oversee our warehouse and our drivers, our food budget, and really just, I guess the best way to describe my job is to make sure the organization runs the way it's supposed to.
Right.
So it's great because I've been able to see the organization from every single aspect, whether it's the volunteers who come in, the volunteer experience, the client experience, the sort of the nuts and bolts, the back end, all the finances. I do our finances, making sure all the bills are paid. More of a nonprofit administration. So it's been great. I've been there 6 years.
Yeah.
And it's been a wonderful learning experience, and I think I've gotten more from AFAC than I would have anywhere else.
Yeah.
So
That is terrific. Now, I think maybe this answered the question, because my question I usually ask people on the show is the different ways you've been involved in the community. What do you see as maybe the biggest success?
I guess the biggest success for me, it's my work at AFAC. Mm-hmm. It's such a community. It revolves around the community. AFAC has 17 staff members, and everybody else who you see is a volunteer. So in the course of a year, we'll see over 1,000, this year probably closer to 1,400 or 1,500 people volunteer with us in a year. And just that community aspect, and I think the biggest reward for me is at the end of the day, when a client comes in and gets their food, mm-hmm. that's my reward. I've done my job. You have food, and I get up in the morning and do it all over again.
Yeah, so many rewards every day.
Yes.
And then, so what's been frustrating? What's been a disappointment?
Disappointment, I try not to see things as disappointments. Okay. A lot of times when I see something as a challenge, I try to look at it as half empty half full instead of half empty. Right. But I think what's frustrating for me is I tend to be a little bit of a perfectionist. And in my position as director of operations, I tend to deal with numbers a lot. Yeah. And so if I'm dealing with someone who's in a position to help folks or to help other people, and you don't necessarily perform that to the best of your ability, that doesn't happen very often. We're really blessed in Arlington that a lot of people are truly invested in making sure that that others are helped. It's not just me. It's yes, I want to move ahead, but I'm going to take the rest of my community along with me. Right. So it's a little bit of frustration in that when people don't do what they're supposed to, but there's always a learning experience in that, and you come back from it and you say, hey, this is what happened, this is what we could have done, this is what we should do better next time. And in most cases than not, it resolves itself and we can happily move along. Right. So.
And so who has inspired you to be involved in the community, would you say?
I think my biggest inspiration is probably my mother. Right. Like I mentioned at the beginning, she instilled in my sister and I from a very young age the importance of giving back and the importance of not just seeing yourself. It's not I, it's we. Right. And I grew up in Cameroon, West Africa, and it really that sense of community is ingrained in you. There's a saying, it takes a village to raise a child. And that's something that's the premise that I was raised on. And when I first moved to the United States and realized that people didn't know their neighbors, it was a foreign concept to me. I've sort of, and unfortunately, I don't know all of my neighbors now. But
you're assimilating.
I'm assimilated. But it's my mother for bringing us up to really give back, not just of yourself, but it's not just money,
right?
That makes the world go round. It's giving back of your time. It's taking the time to stop and say, hey, are you okay? Can I get you a glass of water? Is there anything I can do for you? And for instilling those values in me. And
she lives in Dallas now.
Yes, my mom and my sister live in Dallas.
And that's going okay?
That's going great.
Okay,
Yes,
yeah.
They're blessed.
So what do you? I know you're happy with your job, but what do you feel like? What are some of the issues? What are ways you'd like to work in the future? Maybe what are things that you think are ahead for you?
What's ahead for me? I haven't been at AFAC for almost 7 years. I started there when I was 22, and I'm going to turn 29 this year. And just I look for it, and I'm like, I want to make sure whatever it is I end up doing, it has to be something that gives back.
Right.
And so maybe eventually I'll, I can see myself as an executive director of a nonprofit, or maybe opening up my own nonprofit. I do want to stay involved in the nonprofit sector in some aspect, and even if I don't end up working for a nonprofit, still giving back of my time to a nonprofit is truly important to me, and just something that's going to keep me grounded.
Right. Do you think you might want to get back into more of the juvenile justice system, possibly?
Well, I follow it, and it's funny that I started off saying I wanted to do juvenile justice,
right,
and policy for the juvenile justice system, and I'm doing absolutely nothing related to that now. But
no. Everything is kind of related.
Everything
when you're
is,
helping people in need, it's kind of all related.
It's kind of all related. Yes, I agree, but I don't know. I really don't.
Yeah.
And when I graduated with my master's, it was right when the economy had tanked.
Right.
And I looked for a job for, 2 or 3 years, and I was working three jobs at the time just to make ends meet. And I tell my young cousins all the time, I've paid my dues.
That's fair enough.
But I don't know. Will I ever go back? If it's in God's plan for me,
All right.
yes.
Fair enough.
I'm open to whatever He has in store.
All right. That's good to hear.
Yep.
Well, thank you. I also want to thank our crew, volunteer crew here at Arlington Independent Media. They've been terrific. We've had David Cervantes on camera, Hilary Freer, and Steve Cordle in the booth. But most of all, I want to thank Koube Ngaaje for working so hard for so long to make our communities better places to live.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for all you do.